Welcome to Epic World History. In this journey, we witness the rise and fall of Rome, from the glory of Augustus to the quiet surrender of Romulus Augustulus. The Western Roman Empire, stretched across continents, crumbled under invasions, political corruption, and economic decline. From Ravenna to Constantinople, roads, laws, and faith endured, shaping the Europe that followed. The Western Roman Empire, once the master of the ancient world, had stood for centuries as a symbol of power and civilization. Yet by the mid-5th century, its strength had withered. The city of Rome no longer commanded the armies that once conquered Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Instead, Rome staggered under the weight of invasions, political corruption, and economic decline. The fall of Rome loomed closer each year, and in the heart of Italy, the last chapter of imperial history was being written. At the center of this story stood a young boy emperor, Romulus Augustulus, whose reign would end with the final collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Romulus Augustulus had been crowned emperor in 475 AD, but in truth, he was only a puppet. Barely in his teens, he had no real authority. His father, Orestes, a Roman general of Germanic origin, had seized power in a coup and placed his son on the throne. To many Romans, Romulus represented the empire's weakness. A child emperor controlled by military strongmen. His very name carried irony: Romulus, the legendary founder of Rome, and Augustus, the first great emperor. Yet this Romulus Augustulus would preside not over the birth, but over the fall of Rome. His reign symbolized the fragile shadow of what the Western Empire had become, powerless against the forces gathering beyond its walls. Orestes, the true ruler behind Romulus Augustulus, had risen from the ranks of the Roman military. He once served under Attila the Hun, but later turned against his former masters. Ambitious and ruthless, Orestes sought to control Italy through his young son's crown. Yet his power rested on shaky ground. The empire's treasury was nearly empty, its legions filled with barbarian mercenaries who demanded land and rewards. Without money or loyalty, the Western Roman Empire stood vulnerable. Orestes gambled that he could maintain authority, but across the Alps, new forces were rising. Among them stood Odoacer, a Germanic warrior who would soon determine Rome's fate. Odoacer had long served in the Roman army, commanding respect from his fellow Germanic soldiers. Tall, strong, and pragmatic, he understood the weakness of the empire. By 476 AD, his men Heruli, Syri, and other tribes demanded land in Italy as a reward for their service. When Orestes refused, Odoacer's warriors declared him their king. This was a turning point. The Western Roman Empire's own troops had placed loyalty in a barbarian leader rather than the emperor in Ravenna. With determination, Odoacer marched south, preparing to confront Orestes and end centuries of Roman rule. The fall of Rome was no longer a distant threat, it was imminent. The capital of the Western Empire had shifted from Rome to Ravenna years earlier, a city more easily defended by marshes and fortifications. It was here that Romulus Augustulus lived, surrounded by luxury, yet cut off from the empire's dying provinces. While the Eastern Roman Empire in Constantinople still thrived, the West remained fractured. Britain was lost, Gaul and Spain controlled by Germanic kingdoms, and North Africa seized by the Vandals. What remained was only Italy, fragile and exposed. Within Ravenna's walls, Orestes tried to rally resistance, but the empire's resources were stretched thin. The stage was set for Odoacer's decisive strike. In late 476, Odoacer launched his campaign. His forces swept across northern Italy, meeting Orestes near the city of Pavia. The battle was fierce but brief. Orestes' troops, underpaid and disloyal, could not withstand Odoacer's disciplined warriors. Orestes was captured and executed shortly after, leaving Romulus Augustulus defenseless. With his father gone, the boy emperor's fate now rested in Odoacer's hands. The fall of Rome was no longer just political, it was personal. Embodied in the downfall of a child emperor, abandoned by the very empire he ruled. After Orestes' execution, Odoacer advanced toward Ravenna. The young Romulus Augustulus remained inside the imperial palace, frightened and powerless. Chroniclers described him as barely a teenager, dressed in imperial purple, yet trembling at the thought of betrayal. His ministers urged surrender, for the empire had no legions left to defend him. In the streets of Ravenna, silence fell as the citizens realized their last emperor was about to lose his throne. The Western Roman Empire collapse had come not through glorious battle, but through exhaustion and inevitability. When Odoacer entered Ravenna, he did not order a massacre. Instead, he demanded that Romulus Augustulus renounce his imperial title. The boy complied, removing the diadem and purple robes that symbolized Rome's centuries of power. In that act, the Western Roman Empire ceased to exist. No armies rallied, no senators protested, the empire simply faded. Odoacer spared Romulus' life, sending him into exile at Campania with a small pension. The fall of Rome thus ended not with fire and blood, but with the quiet surrender of a boy who had been emperor in name only. The deposition of Romulus Augustulus in 476 AD marked the symbolic end of the Western Roman Empire. Though fragments of Roman authority lingered in cities and provinces, no new emperor would rule from Rome or Ravenna again. Odoacer sent the imperial regalia, the diadem, the purple cloak, the standards of Rome to Emperor Zeno in Constantinople. By doing so, he acknowledged that the Western throne no longer existed. The world had entered a new age, one dominated not by emperors of Rome, but by kings of barbarian tribes. For the people of Rome, life continued, though changed forever. The Senate still met, temples still stood, and aqueducts still carried water. Yet the sense of eternity that Rome once embodied was gone. No longer was Rome the heart of empire. It had become just another city under the rule of foreign kings. The Western Roman Empire collapse meant that the legacy of law, culture, and architecture endured. But political power shifted eastward to Constantinople and northward into the hands of the Germanic tribes. Odoacer now ruled Italy as king, though he never claimed the title of emperor. His reign marked the true beginning of the Middle Ages in the West. Rome, once a city of emperors, now bowed to a Germanic warrior. Yet Odoacer governed wisely, preserving much of the Roman administration. He allowed the Senate to function and respected Roman traditions, but the imperial dream was gone. The empire that had stretched from Britain to Egypt had vanished, leaving a fragmented Europe in its wake. The Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantine Empire, survived for nearly another 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. From Constantinople, emperors like Zeno and Justinian still claimed the legacy of Rome. To them, the deposition of Romulus Augustulus was not the end, but the removal of a powerless pretender. Yet in the West, people felt the weight of loss. The empire that had built roads, aqueducts, and cities was no longer a protector. The Western Roman Empire collapse left behind kingdoms that would evolve into medieval Europe. Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of the West, faded into obscurity. Unlike Julius Caesar or Augustus, his name carried no triumphs, only tragedy. Exiled in Campania, he lived quietly, supported by a pension from Odoacer. Some sources suggest he survived for many years, but history paid him little attention. His reign became a footnote, remembered only because it marked the fall of Rome. A child emperor dethroned by a barbarian king this was. The last image of an empire that had once ruled the world. The fall of Rome in 476 AD did not come from a single battle or disaster, but from centuries of decline. Economic collapse, military weakness, political corruption, and repeated invasions had drained the empire. By the time Romulus Augustulus lost his crown, Rome was a shadow of its former self. What Odoacer did was simply close the final chapter. The fall of Rome, then, was both sudden in its symbolism and gradual in its reality, echoing through all of European history. For centuries, historians debated whether 476 truly marked the end of Rome. Some argued the empire lived on in the east, in Constantinople. Others saw 476 as the clear dividing line between antiquity and the Middle Ages. In truth, Rome never fully disappeared. Its language, laws, and culture shaped Europe for centuries. Yet the deposition of Romulus Augustulus remained the moment when the Western Roman Empire, as a political power, ceased to exist. It was the day the Eternal City lost its crown forever. The symbolism of Romulus Augustulus was powerful. His very name, Romulus, founder of Rome, and Augustus, Rome's first emperor, seemed destined for greatness. Instead, he became the emperor of Rome's downfall. His reign showed the cruel irony of history, where the last Roman ruler bore the names of its beginning and glory. For contemporaries, this coincidence reinforced the sense that Rome's story had come full circle, ending where it began, in the figure of a Romulus. The Western Roman Empire's collapse opened the door to a new Europe. Germanic kingdoms rose in Italy, Gaul, and Spain. The Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and Vandals carved out their realms, while the Franks would soon begin their ascent under Clovis. Rome's centralized empire was gone, replaced by a patchwork of barbarian kingdoms. Yet even these new rulers adopted Roman customs, laws, and religion. The Roman legacy lived on, shaping medieval Europe even after the empire itself had fallen. Though the Western Empire fell, Rome's cultural and spiritual influence endured. The Latin language evolved into Italian, French, and Spanish. Roman law inspired medieval and modern codes. Christianity, once persecuted, became the central faith of Europe, with the Pope in Rome rising in power even as emperors vanished. The fall of Rome changed politics, but not civilization. In many ways, the West remained Roman long after Romulus Augustulus laid down his crown. Modern historians see the fall of Rome as both an ending and a beginning. It ended the ancient world dominated by a single empire, but began the medieval age of kingdoms, knights, and the Catholic Church. The deposition of Romulus Augustulus symbolized the passing of one era into another. In every broken column and every crumbling wall, one could see both loss and transformation. The Western Roman Empire collapse reshaped the destiny of Europe forever. Thus ended the story of Romulus Augustulus and the fall of Rome in 476 AD. From the glory of Augustus to the surrender of the last emperor, the Western Roman Empire had endured for over 5 centuries. Its collapse did not erase its legacy, but transformed it. The roads, the laws, the faith, and the memory of Rome continued to shape the world long after the crown was laid down. Yet in that quiet surrender in Ravenna, history turned a page. The Eternal City had fallen, and a new age had begun.